Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Shannon Scott coming to you live from Georgia's second oldest town, Darien, Georgia. Established in 1736, very close to the Florida line in a sense, and also great coastal town. The port used to be as larger than Savannah's until Sherman burned it. And of course, for fans of the movie Glory, as you know, filmed in Savannah, we have the scene where effectively the troops burn Darien, Georgia, and terrorize it and that type of thing. But one of the great surviving elements to the town of Darien is its historic cemetery, St. Andrew's Cemetery. We'll just call it the Bonaventure equivalent in a kind of a smaller way. And a lot of the names that you find in, I guess you could say, the coastal towns like Savannah, you also find out here in Darien, Georgia, in St. Andrew's Cemetery. So it's kind of neat, ranging, obviously this is a Catholic kind of collection, but what's really notable about this cemetery is that it's another repository of a kind, a gallery if you'd like, for the sculptor John Walz and his work. And years ago, after getting more acquainted with John Walz, the artist from Württemberg, Germany, for those who don't know, born in 1844 in Germany, orphan, excuse me, swallowed a gnat, customary, but orphan at 13, found his way to America, went on to start to visit Savannah and his brother, Wilhelm. But anyway, he died in 1878. He's buried there in Bonaventure Cemetery. Oh, did I say he died in 1878? That's terrible. Sorry, 1922. At 78 years of age of silicosis. Sorry, I'm still dealing with the bug I swallowed. But one of the loveliest pieces that I've found in St. Andrew's Cemetery here in Darien, Georgia, is this lovely kind of Golgotha sculpture with the badge / shield for little Lawrence. It's probably, one of the finer faces that he carved into a cherubim figure, the winged cherubim, which of course is attached to the baptismal font with the urn-styled flower pot. And so, being a big fan, I was just amazed and thrilled when I found not only a Walz done in Georgia marble, but his autograph. There we see it. Look at that, everybody. J. Walz, so the first name abbreviated. The word sculpture, Savannah, Georgia, or Savannah, sorry, period there. And, today just kind of wandering around thinking there probably are more John Walz pieces. Probably have come across 10 that I would say definitively are John Walz, with a number of them signed. This is one that is for a child named Myrtis. That's quite a name, Myrtis, Myrtis, with the cross, and notice the little Lamb of God down on there. Again, the cradle of the grave. Now that one is not signed, so we'll just go ahead and attribute that to Walz. But another one that kind of fooled the eye, but it was done by a Savannian, is another child's grave for done by the stonecutter J.B. Little of Savannah. That's for Thomas Hilton Parker here, that was born in 1890, died in 1903. And J.B. Little of Savannah also signed this, so I'm sure there are other little works here. Let me go ahead and pull this back so y'all can see that. How about that? That neat, J.B. Little, Savannah, Georgia. But I thought we'd take a little stroll, and I would attempt to show you some of the other definite Walz pieces that exist out here, some that I would attribute to Walz, and there were some real surprises in here. It's just a lovely little day escape, not quite, maybe 90 minutes down the highway. I like to go down Highway 17 south and kind of do that historic highway and buzz by and stop by some of the historical markers, all that. But here we have the family plot of Sutton, and we see someone emulating Walz here later. This is like the walls that neighbors it, but this is like a little more detailed for Alice Marie, beloved wife of Edward Sutton, who died in 1903. So remember, John Walz sculpted, really up until the time of his death, but he also had a withered arm and was suffering with silicosis. This one is unmistakably like, and of course the Hagans you find buried in the Catholic cemetery in Savannah, other places. We see the lily of the valley there at the bottom. We see the resurrection ferns kind of bookending. This is definitely like Golgotha and the crucifix. The crucifix, I can say that, which is masked by the resurrection lilies, which is again about life usurping death. And I had to rub a little bit on this one to get some of the mold away, but we find another autograph of J. Walz, Savannah, Georgia. That was kind of hidden by some green mold, but just a lovely, lovely piece by Walz. But it's very reminiscent of the Groot family headstones in the Groot plot in Bonaventure Cemetery. Let's walk up here a little bit further. Again, there's just a number out here that I would say really Walz had something to do with, but a lot of people know Darien, at least in the Savannah, Georgia area. And I think one of the main buildings that had been made of tabby that got hollowed out by the Civil War, they just are on the verge of completing restoration on through, I think, some of the building funds. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the organization. I should know that. But sometimes I'm just too cemetery distracted to remember some of the other stuff. Beautiful plot. I kind of like the way it's overgrown. That's in some ways probably not a traditional enjoyment, but I kind of like the way it's like all sparkly, clean monuments, but a little overgrown. Of course, they've had a lot of rain. Now, one of the Walzes that stood out, big Greek key pattern, a name that you see in Savannah cemeteries too is Knox, K-N-O-X. And I was like, yeah, that's a Walz. Those lilies have a Walz vibe. Just from a distance, I was like, that's got to be one. And wouldn't you know it, for the big monument, he does the big signature. How about that? Man, that's pretty prominent, isn't it? And when Walz signed your headstone, as some of you may have followed my videos, you've heard me say, he charged you twice the cost of the entire monument. So you paid double. This kind of thing for Walz would be, this is not a Walz, but it's a little too fine for him. He didn't get into like a real finite detail like that with the wheat there to show that the harvest is done, the threshing of the wheat. But so, somebody wanted to have obviously something different from their neighbor as it went. And let's see where I spied a couple other Walzes. I'll just show you some of the other neat things too. The Flanders over there. There's a beauty with the urn, that great kind of Etruscan kind of handle on that vessel. Isn't that gorgeous? Not a Walz, but in the style, that kind of German Austrian influence. Even though of course there's quite a Scottish history here. Now this has obviously seen some better days, but it's kind of always neat to spy up in there, and the box tomb broken by, I'm sure, falling tree branches and all the rest. And everyone's buried underground, but it was there to kind of emulate those English type or European churchyards. Here's one that I wish I could say Walz did, but not unlike some of the things he pulled off in his stones. But notice that hand of God reaching down, grabbing the bouquet to show that, family members being lifted off. Actually, it's the whole flower bouquet, which is quite dramatic with the morning glories there and the daisies and roses. And don't you love that heart shape? Like a pendant that someone might have worn or would wear today. That's just beautiful. Let's see. Where did I see a couple other walls? Again, it's hard to say overall how many he actually did. But today I found in the neighborhood of 10 to 12. And then some that I would say, other families like the style of in the same period that he was living, and they bought their own kind of version. This is one that's just out of this world beautiful. Now, some say it's slightly spooky, and I'll let you be the judge, but look at that little cherubim. The wings are intact, which is, rare unto itself. But again, carved out of solid Georgia marble. The cherubim clearly pulling back that veil of life, that filament between the earthly and the spiritual to reveal the name kind of on the shield to show that, let's say, the Christian warrior has been revealed in heaven. So that's just beautiful. Our darling Jamie, eldest son of Robert and Marion Manson, but quite detailed. This has some Walz fashion to it, but I mean, it's really tempting. Just no signature, as far as I can tell. Now, you want to see the real sign of someone who's been hanging out in the cemetery that's overgrown? Check this out, guys. That's my foot. So, I'm a serious taphophile, and yes, I occasionally leave the eBay tag on my shoes. It's fashionable. But this could be a new fashion for taphophiles in cemeteries. The stuff you gather. And this is really just filled with walls, headstones done at the end of the 19th century. There are two here in the front that fit the walls, kind of headstone with resurrection lilies off to the left side. Sometimes the right, sometimes on top, but that's very much a Walz. Here we have another Walz. Some of these others that are a little late, clearly they were modeling, these off of the ones that Walz did here in the foreground. These lack signatures, but again, that wasn't everybody's thing for, humble reasons or financial reasons, paying double of hundreds or thousands in some cases just to get an autograph was a bit much. But Walz, of course, famous to Gettysburg, battlefield, an Ottoman Empire, or I should say a Christian grave in Bulgaria, the mountains of Bulgaria, where some, I think 8,000 Christians were slaughtered by the Ottoman Empire. So before Savannah, he won that competition. That monument still stands in Bulgaria, in the mountains if you're ever up that way. I've had actually Bulgarians come visit Savannah and talk about it, some with family buried there. This is a child's grave, 1901, for John Manson. Again, the Manson family. I'm sorry. But, 5-year-old child. And again, they had Walz's in the other plot, so this one will also attribute to Walz. And moving along, and again, after you kind of get acquainted with Walz's style, you just start to pick them out, from a distance. You're just like, oh yeah, that's got kind of the raised, just the exact kind of raised font or fonts on the headstone. It's got the correct kind of scroll or parchment look here for Augusta L or IPs. Notice the dates on that, right? You have the I in the middle, or the L, probably an I, and then you have April 1st, 1827, April 1st, 1909. Wow, what a lineup. Isn't that incredible? Yeah, these are the kind of the, dare we say, little pleasures inside of cemeteries. Notice the tassels over there for the curtain of life. I don't know if some of you have probably seen these before, but they often rust out and don't survive. People steal them, but definitely kind of a tassel, but also a little bit of a corn look, which is about resurrection and kind of the new harvest type of thing. But again, not signed by Walz, but definitely a Walz. You know, I'll put my name to it. How about that? You know, I can't prove it, but again, it's kind of an intuitive thing after a while. You just sort of know the artwork, if that makes sense. And we're going to cruise on down here to the second to the last plot. So just hang in there with me. We have Louis Barry Delorme. Delorme. And we see the prayer cloth with the initials of the individual braided together here to show that the name is braided into the gates of the eternal, woven into the heavenly kind of fabric type of thing. Obviously the running boards here for the baptismal font have fallen aside, but they're still here intact, unbroken. And Masonic symbol, of course, John Walz himself, a Mason. And there we have, yet again, a John Walz signature, Savannah, Georgia, with the Masonic symbol, the resurrection lilies intact, a dandy one. And really, it's kind of neat that some of these other families decided, hey, we're going to get an Austrian order from New York or Philadelphia or Europe, and it's going to look like Walz, but it's cheaper or something, you know. Who knows? Maybe it was more expensive because they had to import it. But here are two more Walzes, and I'll show you one more that I'm tempted to call Walz, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And so this is for the O'Brien family. Again, a lot of those Irish came from Wexford County, Ireland, in Savannah and the coastal areas here. Died in Darien in 1904. And for anybody that's in touch with Darien history in the real perspective, if you know what happened around this area in 1909, let me know. I think maybe some kind of yellow fever, malaria type thing came through, but it seems like there are a number of people buried out here that died in 1909, which, you know, in my mind is kind of late for some of that yellow fever stuff, but I guess it's always kind of prevalent. Lovely details on these. James O'Brien, 1902. James O'Brien Jr., born 1866. God's finger touched him and he slept. That's a classic. See the parchment. He added a little extra detail there, almost fabric-like. And these were reminiscent of death notices that were on billboards in medieval villages long before there were headstones. You had the bill of death, or the death bills. So it's a little bit about that heavenly parchment too. But yeah, John Walz really in touch with all that kind of biblical symbolism. And then last but not least, real glorious piece out here for Lily Hopkins. Oh, sorry. Lily S. Hopkins. Wonderful peace dove, probably snagging an olive branch, something to that effect. Some type of flower, again to show kind of the ascension. And that amazing flower wreath, a really garland of flowers. Kind of the inversion too happening there with the stem of the bouquet to show that, you know, life is ending, but it's also kind of cycling and back upward towards the skies. So it really shows that resurrection, death and resurrection thing. The Golgotha kind of crucifix stone there. It's classic to the grotto as well, that style of, you know, mountainy looking stone. Very much about the grotto where Christ was interred and rises from and all that. So not signed, but, you know, this is one that is tempting to attribute to Walz. It's got all the right earmarks, all the right stone styling, but no official signature or date on it. But it's so neat that in one small cemetery in Georgia's second oldest town, Darien, you have an amazing assortment of Walz pieces, and there's a lot of appeal here, right on the water, around the Altamaha and the kind of the inlets. So it's not just about Walz, but a lot of great art, including this. Looks like a, what is a self-portrait of an artist named Igor Shwezov, but I understand he carved this. It's also signed by him, and he lived in the area. Isn't that neat? I always love that about sculptors that kind of make their own. I don't know if maybe he opted to do this. Don't know much about him. He's a little hard to track down, but, you know, again, just part of the intrigue of the place. St. Andrew's Cemetery, everybody. A plethora, a bastion, a gallery, a province of other John Walz artworks. So, you know, take that, you know, 90-minute trip down 95 south, or, you know, maybe a little longer on Highway 17, which is full of great distraction and food stops along the way. But it's been a pleasure touring with you here in St. Andrews. I hope you enjoyed kind of the presentation, just on the fly. But more to come, obviously, and it's nice to turn people on to this place who may not be familiar. So check out St. Andrews and the town of Darien. Lots to do here, really. Well, take good care, and we'll see you out there in the world. We'll story you soon.